What's up, gifted family? Welcome to another episode of the show that is the GP YouTube. Just a reminder that if you support what we do here, make sure to go over to giftedperformance.com and sign up for our automated coaching service. For only $1 a day, you'll get access to 15 highly customized training programs, a macronutrient calculator, our meal planning feature that lets you build and save meals based on your macros, as well as access to our private Facebook group. All subscriptions help us in continuing to put out great content to get you to your fitness goals. Thanks for stopping by, and without any further delay, let's get into today's video. Enjoy.
Welcome back. Another episode of the GPP, the Gifted Performance Podcast, where we give you the information and practical takeaways to improve your own general physical preparedness. You like that? Putting the G all up in your PP. I am here with my three favorites. You've heard of Triple B, Big, Black, and Beautiful, but you've never heard of Quadruple B, which is the bodybuilding Bash Brothers. And I have all three of them right in front of me today. I've got Paul Serafini, Mr. Devil Paul Serafini for the day. Trap Lord, how you doing?
I'm doing great today. Fabulous even.
I've got Cameron Cheek, who always has the strangest posture in the world when he records podcasts. Apparently it's comfortable to sit like this.
He sits like a fat kid who's trying to like hide his tits through his shirt. Like
hide his tits and let his gut hold him up. And Dominic Cusa looking fresh in the new sweater. Sir, where do you record from in your house? I've always wondered what that room is.
This is my desk. That's her makeup vanity.
Ah, okay.
That's
makes
definitely
sense.
Dom's makeup vanity.
Look at this guy. Those are
like
rosy cheeks. All right, today's episode, we've got a coach's Q&A. It's been a minute and a half since we've done one of those, so we have fielded some questions from the audience, and we'll be answering those today. We're going to be answering them in no particular order. I'm just going to run straight down the list. So the first one that I got, and it's a pretty common question that I see from people, but I usually see it asked a little differently. So at Baylo Fit.
I'm sorry, dude. I saw something like 30 seconds ago. Like it really disturbs me that your coffee cup serves as like a glory hole as well. Like
it's nice and warm.
What the fuck?
Cam. Grower or a shower?
On YouTube.
I think we're already not approved for children, so it is what it is. All right, so the first question from our boy at Baylo Fit. I'm sorry that I said your Instagram name and then Cam started finger blasting his coffee cup. That has nothing to do with you, dude. And, you know, we have all the respect in the world for you. First question, and it's an interesting one. Do you prefer chicken breast or protein powder, or is it situational? So let me kind of reframe the question before I throw it to you guys. Do you prefer? We'll throw out the do you prefer, because that's like, what do you like to eat? What tastes better to you? What do you think is better in a hypertrophy or a recovery from training aspect standpoint context? Chicken breast or protein powder? Who wants to run with it?
I don't mind kicking it off, man. So when you phrase the question like that, like what's better from a recovery aspect, probably on paper, like it'd be really easy to make that decision and say, wait, you know, there's higher leucine content, it's rapidly absorbed, but I mean, at least intuitively, but probably that doesn't matter how rapidly the protein gets in, because we know it's not like an immediate need to get those like amino acids in, as long as they're sort of within that recovery block of whatever it is, 12, 24, 36, 72 hours. You know what I mean? I think there is some research showing that delaying protein feeding for like 6 hours post-workout probably isn't a good thing. But you know, ultimately probably doesn't matter as long as you're getting like a large enough bolus of animal protein of some kind, or like the, you know, whether it's, you know, chicken, salmon, beef, whatever, eggs, milk, enough even plant protein is probably okay. If you're getting the spectrum of amino acids or whatever the fuck. But ultimately it's situational. Like, whey's a great convenience food, but me personally, I prefer to eat some sort of, I like meat and rice. Like, it's good, it's filling. I'm a fat boy. I will 99% of the time, post-workout or any other time of the day, choose some sort of meat and rice over whey.
I'm whole foods kind of guy. I rather eat chicken than whey. I feel like with whey too, it's hard to really trust what's on the label sometimes. I don't know how accurate like this 20 grams of protein per 30 grams of scoop is on some of these.
We've seen it, man.
We've seen like bad testing done where they come back and they're like half the amount of protein they claim to be. But I rather eat whole food. That's just my preference if we're talking about preference.
Cam, any input?
It kind of depends on where I'm at. I guess in the season or pushing food, because I'm at the point now where I've just gotten to the point of hating chicken breast. So I'll usually eat chicken thighs, but post-workout, I'm usually going with whey or something easier to get down.
Now, I've seen
my can of green beans, fucking chicken salmon, dude. Let's 200 grams of rice, maybe dump some olive oil on that motherfucker, like a gram of sodium, dude. That's the good shit.
Right now, my post-workout meal is like frosted Rice Krispie cereal, honey, Fairlife milk, and whey.
Okay, but let's there's a common thing here. This is all surrounding white rice or sugary carbs. Part of my master's, that was one of the things I delved into was hyper insulin states mixed with the amino acids. So really between the two, as long as that insulin's high and you're pumping in those amino acids, you're going to really absorb both just as fast.
I think an argument can be made that you don't even need the sugary carbs to get that insulin response if you are going with whey protein.
I mean, we've seen that whey protein even gives off an insulin response.
Huge insulin response.
I'd really need to look at that data a little harder, but I know that, whey and leucine and the branched chain amino acids generally do cause an insulin response, but it's hard for me to believe it's to the same magnitude that something like a sugary carb would bring.
Imagine if you go hypo and just eat a big bowl of chicken.
It's maybe a scenario where you get like a spike. It might be something where like leucine causes a spike, but then it comes back down and you don't get that same area under the curve that you would if you were to have like a meal with actual carbohydrates in it.
The real question, I think, is, and I don't think we can answer this because we don't have really the best methodology, is how anabolic is the physiological insulin response, and especially around training. So, because I believe that it's common knowledge with physiological response to insulin. I mean, clearly, because it adds to tissue. You know what I mean? Like it puts glucose and shit into muscle cells. So by definition, it's anabolic. But I think like when it comes to like when we're talking about net protein balance, it's generally accepted that insulin within the physiological range more serves to decrease protein breakdown. But we don't even have really good methodology for measuring protein breakdown. So how beneficial is that? Probably somewhat beneficial, but probably also, like most things within the physiological range, very hard to notice or measure over time. Right?
So Yeah. Let me take the whey question a little bit further, because I've seen this asked in Lyle's group a bunch of times and just on Instagram, social media quite a bit. Is there any downside to consuming all of your protein from whey protein shakes? People seem to want to ask that question all the time. Am I losing out on anything if I only get protein from whey protein shakes or casein, whatever?
I mean, I think no. If the amino acid profile is the same, it's pretty much if it's complete and you're just getting that in all day. My stomach would be destroyed if I did that, but I don't think it would be that big of a difference.
Do you want to go ahead and answer, Cam? I know I'm a mic hog.
Same page with Dom.
I'll say there's this neuroticism, a neuroses or whatever, like just the type of person I am, and that little bodybuilder inside my head that's just like that can't be okay. Like, like you gotta eat some real fucking food, like people did before whey was like a fucking thing, but I think on paper, and I've actually seen people. Now, granted, these people had good genetics and they were also enhanced, but I've actually seen people live off of essential amino acids and like carbs and veggies, and they fucking are jacked, or were at that time. They were really fucking strong. They looked really good. So that would lead me to believe that probably whey, you're gonna make it.
Yeah, I think that what we can all agree on is that if you're a person who gets all of your protein from whey protein shakes, you're a real piece of shit.
Yes.
You're a bad human. So BaloFit, if that's you, check yourself, man. Let's get it together. Your mom and dad, they're a little disappointed. Put the whey down. It is a gateway drug. You'll be using them trenbolonis before you know it. All right, next question. Here comes from AV_Montoya_. A lot of underscores. Maybe dial it back a little bit. The question here from Mr. Montoya, I'm going to assume that's his or her last name. What would be the peaking/loading process for a classic physique competitor who had to cut hard to make weight? So let me set this and kind of define some strict constraints so that you guys can answer more accurately. Let's say we define, because cut hard can mean a lot of things. Some people think, I cut 3 pounds and that was really hard. And the people are like anything under 15 pounds and it's not that hard of a cut. So let's assume this is an individual who has lost roughly 6 to 8% of their body weight over. So for a 200-pound male, this is someone who lost 12 to 16 pounds over a 7-day time frame to make weight.
I want to add a little thing to that cut hard definition too, because like sometimes people will look at raw numbers like what Alberto Nunez diets on, and they're like, that's not hard. He's eating 3,000 calories most of his diet. It's like the dude is fucking shredded, lost like 30 fucking pounds. That was a hard diet. You know what I mean? Anyways, go on. That's kind of sidetracked.
All right, so let's kind of start with our resident peaking expert, Mr. Cameron. For someone, and this is something that you've had to do recently, a classic physique competitor who had to cut hard to make weight, what is the peaking/loading process to bring them back to life?
So essentially, you're going to establish baseline water and electrolyte levels a few weeks prior to peak week even happening. I want to say with him, he cut 12 pounds down from like 202 to 190. So a little bit under your parameters. But what I did with him, I want to say that I raised his water and sodium 50% above normal at the start of peak week. 2 days into that, so at 4 or 5 days out, I then dialed his sodium. I pulled it down to 1.5 grams and left his water up high. At that point, we were down about 6 and still had about 6 more pounds to go. And we were 2 days out from weigh-ins. And credit to you too, Ryan, because you kind of helped teach me this process as well. But at 1 day out from weigh-ins, I then moved all of his solid meals to liquid. So Balo Fit, he was drinking whey shakes pretty much for all of his meals, just whey and water.
Hey, shout out Balo. That's our boy.
Pulled out his veggies as well. So his fiber was basically trace at that point. And then on day of weigh-ins, he was about 2 pounds over at that point. Weigh-ins were at like 5 p.m. So he didn't eat or drink anything during that day. About an hour out from weigh-ins, he was still about 1.5 pounds over. So put him in the bathroom with sweatpants, hoodie, cut the shower on all the way, blocked off the air, blocked off the doors and the holes in the bottom of the door so the steam and heat couldn't travel out. And he ended up making weight. And then as soon as he did make weight, immediately just hydrated him out of the gate with liquid carbs, Pedialyte, water, Gatorade, and I think like a honey mixture. I think his first 2 meals, I went with just straight liquid nutrients, and then from there started reintroducing solids.
Dom, you want to talk about any of the kind of the underlying science there, why with the water regulation and whatnot?
Yeah, well, one thing too, I like to consider sometimes when these guys have to cut so hard, depending on when they do this cut, like I think it was Brandon, like 12 days out or something he started. But I think when somebody's dieting on low carbs for so long, it's kind of hard to carb them up really heavy. Like if they're used to like, I don't know, sub 100 grams or 100 grams, if they're a bigger dude, pushing like that 800-900 gram carb up sometimes it doesn't end up well, just because their body for so long was just so used to lower carbs. That's why, like me personally, I like to fat load in the middle of the week on peak week, and then bring carbs back in really heavy 2 days out, and then the day before the show, dial back the carbs, bring the fats back up, and just kind of hold the look all day on a 1 day out. I noticed that like they don't have, GI issues. They absorb the carbs a lot better. I just feel like internally, if they're so used to low carbs, their insulin response has been really low for a long period of time, and then all of a sudden you hit them really hard with all that, they might not just be responsive internally to that. They might overshoot insulin just because they haven't had it. They end up going hypo and just things like that. I mean, there's times like where I've told Paul, like, I've eaten and then like I go hypo out of nowhere. And I think that's just like that over insulin response that is just internal because I'm so used to eating lower carbs at the time or whatever it is. But that's why I really like using fat loads. Like early on in the week, it makes carving up a lot easier because, you're filling back up like intramuscular triglycerides and, things that we don't really think about all the time to give like that true fullness to the muscle.
I think. Well,
I was going back on kind of what Dom was saying, but I mean, I will say with somebody that does have to make weight, if they're dieting on super low carbs, it can be tough to fill someone back out, especially the night before, just because that food is only going to get in so quick, and you're only going to get so much opportunity to get food in within 12 hours or whatever it may be. But if that person has been dieting on super low food, which if they're trying to make weight, they're more than likely going to be at low food going into it. So, I don't think that getting the food in is more so the issue versus making sure that the athlete is getting hydrated and getting the electrolytes, proper fluids, and everything back in before the food is coming in so it can be properly reabsorbed.
Yeah, I think also just to note on add to that, and then something what Dom was talking about, because your most rapid tool when it comes to adjusting look is going to be fluid and electrolytes. versus the food that takes several hours to not only like get through the GI, but then be, like for carbs to be added to muscle glycogen and stuff like that, fats to be added to intramuscular triglyceride stores, all that stuff. Like that shit takes time. And then going back to what Dom said, I think to make it make sense conceptually, having those fat loading periods, because we already know, just like a normal person, right? Like when you give them carbs, we already lose about 25% of that just through like heat. It's just an inefficient, you know what I mean? So having that sort of fat there as well to kind of buffer that and like almost maybe in some ways spare some of those carbs, I think is part of that process. And then not only that, and something I don't want to get too deep into, like a lot of the clients that we coach have certain aspects of their supplementation going into their show that are already going to make them sort of better at using carbs, more likely to go hypo, and just end up with a flat look if other things aren't considered outside of just carb intake.
Yeah, I think electrolytes are a huge overlooked thing. When really, too, like if you have someone's electrolytes and water dialed in, you can send them on stage flat and they're still going to look damn good. Like, I think, and I've come to learn too, and I still have a lot of learning to do. I could be wrong, but I don't find as much of an issue with pushing food super hard as to not having the electrolytes dialed in to where they need to be. The only time that I've pushed food hard and really seen like a negative impact is someone's gut being bloated. You know what I mean?
I want to add also one thing too that we haven't hit yet. I think what's huge too, outside of the thing I noticed within myself when we were peaking, is total movement and activity throughout the loading process. Is that I noticed this throughout dieting as well. I could have a very low calorie day, and if I sat my ass at this computer and I got 4,000 or less steps, I'd finish the day like kind of looking at myself like I'm decently full, like I'm not as flat as I normally am. And then same thing throughout the loading process. The day I looked the best was when I sat in a car for 10 hours and didn't move. That's when I was the most full, the most tight, least watery.
That's why I always look good. I don't move.
So I was at a show, I think in 2017, and I was sitting next to a guy's coach, and we were just kind of shooting the shit about his competitor. And he's talking about how he had a competitor who was trying to make weight for Classic. They had to cut him really, really hard. He ended up not even making it because he had to cut so hard. And then talking about kind of how he loaded him up after that hard cut. And he was talking about how he did something similar to what Cam did immediately after weigh-ins. Even though they missed, he was like, all right, let's get hydrated. Hit the Pedialyte, the Gatorade, hit some of that honey, some of those really easy to digest carbohydrates. And then what he actually had his client do was go and get a training session in. So he did about 15, 16 sets of upper body, just pump stuff. And he said, and it was kind of to Dom's point of his argument was, if we can get that training in, we can bump up insulin sensitivity. And then after the training session, what can happen is his body will be more sensitive to carbohydrates. And then he had his client do the exact same thing after prejudging before the night show. After prejudging, he went and got a lift in and then carved up hard for the night show. And the guy was super, super lean, so he looked phenomenal. So I don't know how much of that, but do you think that's a good strategy? Is that a viable strategy?
I think
the training, but you just got to be careful with inflammation on that. What threshold is that person going to hit? That's like, okay, now I'm just inflamed, and like I'm not going to have the separation that I should have been having. Just like us after a hard leg day, if we pose the next day, we're not as deep detailed and things like that. So like, where is that line? I guess you have to kind of know the client like really well when it comes to inflammation response on their training. Like, you could see that as an issue. One thing I do is 2 days out, I still have them do their cardio, but I just dial back the intensity of it just so that they're still moving, and that's their highest load day. So like, I have a guy competing Saturday, and today's Thursday. We're doing like 850 grams of carbs, but I still have him do his cardio today, just so that activity is a little higher, and then he's going to leave. You're going to have some of that like training carryover throughout the day now.
I'll actually say that the biggest concern that I have with an athlete training 2 days out, 1 day out, isn't losing the lines. It's more so, this is going to make it so much harder to fill back out. Because I used to have athletes not train the last 2 days leading into a show, but I've started to learn that I like how it can help with some of the glycogen reabsorption following the training. But you've just got to be careful with how hard you do go, because it can push that flatness versus really worrying about the inflammation. Like, I don't think anybody's going to be training or going to even be able to train hard enough at 1 day out that they're going to have to worry about losing lines unless they're going in and doing squats.
So I almost actually disagree with that, because I found like when you're like a week out and you walk into the gym, you have that feeling of like, I want to do everything. I don't want to train light. Like, I want to go in here and I want to get the sickest fuck. I want to train hard. So like, I pulled back because, I know that's the wise thing to do and the instruction given to me. But like that last upper body session, everything in me was like, man, I want to go hard as fuck today. You know what I mean? Like, and I think like with somebody with an athlete mindset, most often pulling back is almost like the hard thing to do.
Well, I mean, even with Jarek, because I had him do at 2 days out, he had a full upper day, but he had that photo shoot with Will Whitman 1 day out. So we just basically had 2 full upper days back to back. And the only issue that I ran into with him was, we're having to pick up how much food we're pumping in at 1 day out now because of that upper body day. It wasn't, a losing lines issue with doing that and inflammation. It was just like, we just drove that car another 20 miles. We got to put 20 more miles of gas back in the car.
For sure. And I think to go with Ryan's original question that we sort of detracted from the training throughout the day, I'm sort of with Dom on that in terms of just being careful about, because I think we've seen this too, or maybe even had clients experience it or seen somebody else backstage going through it. To pump they go way too hard into their fucking pump.
Yeah, and they lose a lot of detail.
Yeah. And then
that's just from fans.
and a lot of times it's people too that are like, yeah, I'm doing bodybuilding right now for fun, but right after this, I'm going to do classic physique. And that's the one I really care about. And I'm like, why the fuck are you going so hard in your pump right now, man? Like,
all right. AV Montoya, do you feel like we answered your question? Because we did. You are welcome, sir. Thanks for coming by. Our next question comes from Dom's client. Her name is Ashley. Her last name starts with a D, and then there are a bunch of other letters, and they're in a very strange order, and I'm not even going to try. So Ashley D, here we go. So Ashley asks, what is your favorite part of coaching? And then a secondary question of what is your biggest pet peeve? So who wants to start with their favorite part of coaching?
Money, man. It's the money. All right. I'm just no, it's not the money. Favorite part of coaching? I would have to say Honestly, the continual learning aspect. Like I know with me, when it comes to preps, peaking people, like the amount of knowledge that you learn within those last 48 hours, 72 hours going into a show, like it's almost exponential compared to a textbook or on paper. So I would say it has to be just the continual like knowledge that you learn through experience, but also the reward that you get and chemistry that you build working with athletes and working with good, genuine people. The second part of the question, there's a pet peeve there. We'll get to that, but the good side to it is working with good people. I grew up playing sports, playing football. So there was always like a camaraderie there. So that reward of working with somebody and having that duo role of the coach and athlete, I think that's my favorite part. But Paul, what you got? What's your favorite part?
I'd just say gratification in almost any form or like any aspect of it. So whether that's a success, whether it's feeling like you learned a new skill, becoming better at working with people, communicating with people, it all feels good, man. So I just say any form of gratification throughout every aspect of whatever we do. Making people huge, man, feels good. Yeah, that's about all I got to say on that.
Yeah.
No pet peeves, Paul?
What?
No pet peeves? You know pet peeves second? Okay, hold on. Dom.
Let's
Continue.
swing back around to the pet peeves because we're going to give some.
I think my favorite part is like all the different kind of people I work with. Reaching multiple different kind of goals with different people. I like that. I love how much I learned from all this. I mean, you can only learn so much in school. So working with you guys now and stuff like that, I've learned a lot. And then even just working with so many different types of clients, because I work with a wide variety of people, and I learned something different about each and every single one of them. So that's also cool. And then all the people I've met, all with now and stuff, that's definitely something I love about coaching.
Absolutely.
I think my favorite part and my pet peeve are one and the same. It was when I was growing up, I had a very close knit group of friends. I had 5 or 6 friends that they were my only friends. And I used to see these other people and they had a million friends. They had dozens and dozens of friends. And so I feel a lot of the relationship part of it is my favorite part. I feel like I have 60, 70 people now that text me on a daily basis that I would consider my friends. The pet peeve is the exact same. Jesus Christ, you motherfuckers, don't stop texting me. I used to look at people in high school and college and their phone would be blowing up all day. I'm like, damn, that's so cool. It must be so cool to have people blowing up your phone all day. And now I'm that guy and holy shit, does it suck. Clients, reminder, 7 a.m. to 8 p.m., I'm all yours. Past 8 p.m., before 7 a.m., you California, Colorado motherfuckers, you got to keep your text to yourself or don't expect a response until the morning. So my pet peeve is recording a podcast and after 45 minutes being done, having 37 text messages and 17 emails to respond to.
Cam, what's your pet peeve?
The people where you ask a question, whether it just be a yes or no, and all of a sudden I figured out how they just spent the last 4 hours of their morning, when it's just hey man, I just needed to know what your hunger was like. I didn't need to know how you just spent your wake up to somehow you're getting your nails done. You had a tough time getting there. There was a lot of traffic. And now you're back home and you're really struggling. I just need to know if you're hungry or not, man.
Paul, no one cares that you got your nails done. Cam just wants to know if you're hungry or not.
I know, right? Is it my
Paul,
turn?
You're up. Actually, no, I think Paul's going to diatribe here. So, Dom, let's have you hop in for a pet peeve before we lose track of everything.
My biggest pet peeve is if you're working with me, you're working with me. No, nobody else. Like, don't tell me that this guy at the gym told you to do this and try that, and he doesn't know what he's doing. Well, look, bro, you paid me. You're working with me. That's it. That's how it's gonna go.
I don't even have a biggest pet peeve. I just have a lot of them, and that's up there too. But I think it falls in line with the instant gratification people. It's just like, hey man, like just do what we need to do, and 6 months from now we'll find out if it's a good idea or a bad idea. But there's only one way to find out, and you're gonna have to do it.
So I hate everything. Cam fucking stole mine. I got a lot of them, but my over explainers, dude. I'm on the phone, dude, and I'm just like doing this, or the phone's on mute, and I'm like, what the, like Cam's next to me, and I'm just screaming into the phone, just fucking say it, like asshole, like dude. Man, oh fucking man, dude. Like it's almost an insult to like your intelligence, right? Like we're all smart cookies here, man. We can put the puzzle pieces together. I don't need you to break down the story into like 8 different steps of how we got here. Just tell me where we are and let me put the pieces together and figure the situation out. This doesn't need to be an hour phone call. Like, that's my thing, dude.
The just absolutely maddening. Like, when I squat and I get a little pain when I'm at like 10 degrees of internal hip rotation, but when I, angle my toes out to about like you don't even know what the fuck you're talking about.
Like, bro,
film it, send it to me.
Squat, yes or no?
Yes. Holy shit.
Another one for me too is just like kind of how you were saying, Ryan, like all those little details. And like, honestly, a biggest pet peeve for me is some of these coaches out here, man. Like you put so much emphasis on so little tiny things, and you've got great effort at putting it there, but put it in the shit that matters, man. Like, I applaud your efforts and all this that you're putting in, but man, you don't need so much effort on how you put the mayonnaise and the ketchup and mustard on the sandwich if you can't even put the meat and the cheese on there.
Side to side, diagonals only. For mustard. Mayonnaise, you got to go up and down.
But man, it's not even going to be good if you don't even have
the X in the box. Maybe some swirlies.
They'll paint Picasso on that sandwich, but you're basically just going to eat a ketchup sandwich.
I feel like that's some Cam shit.
All right, Ashley. Now you know what Dom likes about you, and you know what Dom hates about you. So the things that he hates about you, maybe work on them. The things that he likes about you, keep it going, girlfriend. All right, our next one and our last one, the one that will play us out today, is from JC _ future fit physician. JC, good luck with your goals of being a physician and fit in the future. Hopefully one day you can pull that future out and you're just strictly JC fit physician. Honestly, reserve that Instagram tag right now because someone might try and come in and steal it from you. JC, he asks, when should a deload week be utilized? And these greedy motherfuckers, it's another 2-part question. Are they as important for enhanced athletes? So we'll start with when should a deload week be utilized?
Can I kick this one?
Kick it.
This one is.
So I think there's a difference between, in my opinion, when you need a deload and when you should probably take a deload, right? Like if you have multiple sessions in a row where performance is on the down and down, you're looking like shit, you're feeling like shit, sleep's fucked up, we're in a bad mood, we need like 8 naps a day, hunger's in a weird place, you're super hungry or you're not hungry at all, like you probably, you probably are at that point where you need a deload. We are moving from overreach towards overtraining, maybe.
You'll know.
So, but I personally feel that it is not a bad idea to take a deload before you need one. Now, not necessarily from the standpoint of your long-term progress, but even stuff like injury prevention and shit like that. You know, not driving yourself towards psychological burnout. All of those like little, benefits there. Now, I also sort of believe, and people fucking think that this is a little weird coming from me, that you don't, a standard bodybuilder, right, training an hour or two a day, you don't ever need a deload. I don't think you ever truly fucking need one unless you're hurt or psychologically burnt out. You don't need one. Your body will sort of force you to deload when it has to, when it feels it for some reason needs to protect you or can't work at some effort level. You know what I mean? And that has been demonstrated. Like when you create a lot of muscle damage, your nervous system will not allow like full activation like when you're fully rested. That's like your body saying like, hey, we're deloading right now, whether you want to or not. And we've sort of, a lot of us have probably seen that within our training blocks where performance is up. We train our chest, bench press performance is up. We have a hard session. We come back 3 or 4 days later and we can't push the numbers we want to. Performance is down. We come back a few days later. Performance is way back up, higher than it was that last even 2 sessions ago. So like our body got the recovery it needed one way or another. You know, you just had a shitty session between those. And then to answer that second part, or should we let other people expand on that first part real quick?
Well,
Anyone want to throw something in there?
I want to play a little devil's advocate. Let Paul just keep doing his thing here, because you know what? We're gonna have some clients that are gonna listen to this and probably go, "Man, why you just said I don't have to deload?"
Well, we talked about other benefits of deloading as well. Because no one likes feeling like shit. No one likes being run down. No one likes being injured or psychologically, the aspect and motivational aspects of training.
Dom hates himself.
Yeah.
No, but I don't hate myself. But I was like, I never deloaded. I never took breaks. I never did any of that until I started working with Paul. Paul does all my training. I can say that like this last training block I'm in, I don't like taking the deload approach. I just take like 5 days off and then train again. But I noticed I probably felt like at the end I could have kept going. Forcing myself to take these days off, I don't feel that psychological burn. I come back and I'm way recovered. But I feel like Paul had a really good point on it's helping me not get injured. It's helping me not get mentally burned out from the training and all those things. So I feel like Cam just said our clients are going to be like, whoa, well, why am I even doing this now? I think not so much from like a performance standpoint, but like mentally, injury wise, I love taking these days off now. And then like I come back into my new training block and I just feel like I'm ready to rock. Like I smash my week ones every single time. And I feel like taking those breaks every 4 weeks, how we do it, sets that up a lot. Even though it's not like a true, my body was so battered down to the ground, I need the break. It's a good like proactive kind of break. Like you're doing it ahead of time just so that you don't fall back behind.
Exactly. One side benefit that I want to throw out there too and pose a question to you, Dom, isn't it also nice having that period of time where you're spending either no time in the gym or less time in the gym just to focus on other shit in life?
Yeah.
I was gonna say,
like it gets me so ahead on work. It gets me like things around the house, any errands I have to run. Like there's none of that mental stress that I'm like, I have to find time to get to the gym today. I could take my time with everything and just put a lot of quality into everything else in life aside from the gym these days now.
like there's nothing beats a deload that falls on a peak week. for one of my clients, like especially when I'm traveling to a show. Because, and two, you know, you were talking about it, Dom, like focusing on other things in life. Like at the end of the day, let's be real. Like we've coached maybe one person, I think, that can actually get to be a bodybuilder, and that be it, you know, and them not have to have any other kind of job, source of income, stuff like that. And people want to just be straight serious bodybuilders. And I'll be the first to say that we coach serious bodybuilders and they deload and they're totally fine. You know, like you might have a kid, you probably got a relationship, you should have some kind of job, like take the deload, learn some stuff about your body. Let Paul have a few days to even create the next training phase. And just do it.
I think deloads are a very polarizing subject for people, and whenever there's kind of like that polarizing subject, there's people on opposite ends of the spectrum. There's the you don't need a deload, you never need a deload, just keep pushing harder, and then there's the folks that are super on the side of proactive deloads that are like schedule your deload 1 week every 4 weeks and like stick with that and do not change. And whenever there are these kind of like polarized ends of the spectrum, the truth is always right there in the middle. And that's kind of what Paul started with. It was like, he's not making the point that you don't need a deload at all. He's not making the point that, like, if you don't deload, your body will explode. He's sitting in the middle and saying, listen to your body, understand your body. If your performance is consistently moving down session after session, why would you not deload? But on the other end of that, if your performance is improving session over session over session, but you've hit your 4-week period, you're like, oh, got to deload now. Would when there's the possibility that you could push that a little bit further.
Yeah,
or
and I feel
the aspect of those other benefits, like you may just deload anyway, you know?
Yeah.
Really,
and I feel like me and Paul do some cool stuff with my training too, like kind of like auto regulate on feel. Like if I'm just smashing a session, like he'll be like, okay, take another set to RIR this week. If you're not, and if I hit like RIR too soon in a movement, I just stop there and I don't do like the next set that he has listed. And, you know, which of course, like a lot of things go into that: hydration, food, sleep, all that. But just, I feel like that's another really cool thing is like, again, going based on how your body feels in some of these sessions. Like my body might not, might be forcing me to deload a little early because, prior sessions were super intense. That when I came in this day, like I could only do 75% of the workload, not 100%.
I think that's always really fun. I think that's sort of the perk with working with a coach that has experience and, is very good at sort of sensing their own biofeedback or just recognizing things in training and being able to pull back or push forward when needed. Unfortunately, through client volume and then not being able to necessarily trust a lot of clients, like that process doesn't get to be used as widely as it probably should be used when doing client training.
And two, there's not as many people too who have had enough practice with it. Because I mean, even myself, like I've been working with you, Paul, for I think almost 3 years next spring. And two, even for me, like there's phases and stuff where still with RIR stuff, I'm like, damn, man, like on paper, like this shows that probably I still need to keep focusing and making sure, like, was that really 3 or was that really 2? Like because what I understand with fatigue accumulation and stuff like that, I can see on paper, and we see it even with clients, like, I know for a fact that wasn't RIR, or I know for a fact you could have done more. You could have done this. And it just takes a lot of practice and a lot of, focus that can be tough with counting your reps, counting your tempo, also knowing where you're at, relative to finish that set. And yeah, it could be tough.
I think it's tough for individuals that are very like, I can't think of a good term for it, but hard number focused, where like they see 3 RIR and they're like, I need to be at 3 RIR, right? But like, no, really, like conceptually and qualitatively, like I'm just asking that the set is pretty hard, but it's not a grinder or to failure, and that it just started getting hard, that the bar's not really slow. You know what I mean? Like, and then when we see like 1 RIR, I'm asking for you to be pretty close to failure, or, you know what I mean, for that bar to be really slow and for you to finish that set and say, man, that was fucking hard,
Just start putting on client sheets where they can highlight intensity as green, yellow, red.
Yeah, I mean, seriously, there are some coaches that use a 3-number system, 1, 2, or 3, and how hard you just rate it. How hard was it,
Yeah, I think I've seen some templates that actually work that way, where you rate the session difficulty or the exercise difficulty 0, 1, -1, and then it auto regulates the following session based off of that previous #AI. But I have seen, so let me know if you guys have seen this too, and we'll kind of close out on this. I have seen somewhat of a paradigm shift as people have started preaching lower volume training approaches. They've also shifted over to more of a auto-regulated or a reactive deload structure than in the past. And what I saw in the past was people programming ridiculous volumes, so 30 to 40 sets per body part, and saying, you have to deload at this point. Like, you have to deload when you hit that 4th week. And now, as people have kind of shifted the volume back and kind of re-arrived at that 10 to 20 sets per body part per week, they're saying, oh, you know what? Maybe we can actually extend out the mesocycle volume to 5, 6, 7, 8 weeks before we actually need a deload. So I wonder if there's somewhat of a relation. I suspect there is somewhat of a relationship there.
It's got to be, because we know that, or I don't want to say we know, generally accepted that volume is a greater contributor to fatigue than maybe your effort or your loading or intensity, right? Which makes sense. You do more, you are more tired. Like, but we also, and I found myself backing off on volume. Like, we were talking about this the other day, the volumes we used to give fucking people, like we wouldn't give that to people these days, and we wouldn't do it ourselves anymore. And, I made a big rant on this on Instagram the other day. Like, more isn't always more. Like, sometimes more just gets you better at doing more, and you don't get more results or what you're necessarily looking for. And that's something I've noticed, is that pulling back a little bit on volume, people are getting just as good of a training response, sometimes even better. And even if it's just as good, if you can get just as good a response, do less, be less fatigued, like, that's a fucking win.
I wonder if there's a lot of psychological factor that goes into there, where people know that they're focusing more on quality versus quantity.
Oh, absolutely, man. If I only have 2 or 3 sets of movement, I'm not bullshitting those 2 or 3 sets of movement, because I only have 2 or 3 opportunities to have a good fucking training session, stimulus, and feel like I fucking put the work in. If every fucking movement I have has like 5 sets, like, there is a higher chance that I'm going to have sessions where I take 8-minute rests between fucking sets because I'm fucking bored. I don't want to try. I'm fucking exhausted, whatever. And then circling back around to something that relates more to Ryan's question about the relationship or whatever, is I think there's like a double-edged sword there, because a lot of times when we talk about lower volumes, now we're talking about higher efforts, higher loads. And so in some ways, yes, less volume, less fatigue, can train a little longer, but every session is most likely going to be a little harder. And if we're talking about heavier loads, although we do like to identify volume with injury rates, Like, we've all been there where we've benched triples and fives and doubles for fucking too long, and things don't feel good. And it's not a fucking volume issue because our volume is ridiculously low. You know what I mean?
When I've run into those issues in the past with getting injured or having little stuff pop up from going too heavy on maybe like a core movement, like a bench or a squat or a deadlift, it's always, in my scenario, been incongruence with very high volumes on other movements. So for example, I might do like, 5 heavy triples on squat. And then I would go to like the leg press and I would do like 5 12s. And then I would do some like lunges for like 4 sets of 12. So I don't know how much of it I would attribute to the actual heavy movement itself, the higher volumes on the other movements, or the wear and tear of the combination between the two.
I guess part of it too would be what we consider high volume, since volume can be measured in a bunch of ways. I think my problem was set volume never changed back when I was training really heavy. So like, let's say I was doing 10 sets of pressing during a hypertrophy phase. When I went to heavier phases, I was still doing 10 sets of triples or whatever. So I would do 5 triples on flat incline press, heavy as fuck. And then I would be like, all right, now we're going to do 5 5s on pin press right after. You know what I mean? And yeah, on paper, if you're doing volume based off of a volume load, sets times reps times weight, seems low, but set volume is still high as fuck.
Yeah, I think maybe you could get, I don't know, this data probably doesn't exist, maybe a comparison of injury rates for those who follow a more Bulgarian style of training, super high frequency, super high intensity, but lower in terms of volume, versus like a German volume training style where you would see a greater incidence of long-term injuries.
I think part of the problem with the argument too is that, some people, everybody has like a thing they want to cling to. Like, to one person, you're like, lifting heavy, that's what fucks you up. And then the next person is like, well, I think volume is more of the issue. And then another person will be like, I only get hurt when I do high frequency. And it's like, all of these things can contribute to injury risk, especially if your movement patterns and warm-up practices and behaviors just aren't on where they should be.
So fuck them all. They're all wrong, and we're the only ones that are right. Anything that you guys wanted to circle back to before we call this a day? Cam, the sun shining on you, just making you look beautiful.
My biggest pet peeve as a coach is this sun shining on me. I'm circling around.
Anything else? Circle back to? Revisit? Shall we say thank you to our lovely guests and be on our way? Let's do it.
Good.
All right, Balo. Mr. or Mrs. I'm going to say Mr. Montoya, since he asked about classic physique. Mr. Montoya, Ashley D, and JC, we're watching you, bro. Don't be a future fit physician. Be a current fit physician. We are the quadruple B, the bodybuilding Bash Brothers. That's a tongue twister. We will be back for another episode. We've got plenty more questions to ask. We will see you there. In the meantime, you can find us at Gifted Performance. I am at the _Squat Father. We've got at Polyrocket, at Team Kuza, and at Cameron _Cheek. Wow, that was a lot to go through.
Always.
The rest of you, like, comment, subscribe, the usual stuff that YouTube people say, and we will catch you on the next one. Stay gifted in the meantime. We love you. Goodbye and good night.
Bye.